joins us to lead the service. If you're watching at home, please join the virtual side aisle at midday. The Zoom link was in the weekly email, and you can find it via the link in your YouTube description. And to those of you in the chapel, do join us for refreshments in the side aisle here after the service. Our bookcase library is now available every Sunday, where you can borrow books about Unitarianism and other world religions and philosophies too. If you wish to borrow a book, please write your details in the blue book before removing it. At 6 p.m. this evening, we have our regular 30 minutes mindfulness and meditation. And then, yeah, I thought my voice would carry naturally, but it doesn't. And then at 7 p.m, we have a heart and soul gathering. You can find information about these and all our activities in your service sheet and on our website. You can also pick up a copy of our Open Mind newsletter from the stewards table at the back of the chapel. Our collection will take place during the closing music. You will have an opportunity to make a donation in cash or by card. This month's offering will be shared between the work of the chapel and our good cause for the month, which is Street Doctors, a charity that works with young people at risk of violence by empowering them with skills and knowledge to save lives. We light the chalice as a symbol of our free and questioning Unitarian faith. May this flame be as the light of knowledge in our minds and the warmth of our love in our hearts. We also light one more chalice as a prayer for peace, for the people of Israel and the people of Palestine, and in recognition of the conflicts that are sadly taking place around the world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, there is a place for you here in our spiritual community. Whatever your race, gender, sexuality, class, age, physical and mental capability, we welcome you here in the spirit of love. We come together each Sunday and we are keen to get to know each other in this spiritual community. So please turn to someone near you, say your name, and welcome them to the chapel this morning. Listen out for the music, which will be signal that the time of speaking has come to an end. Greetings, CJ.
So we're greeting everyone?
Yeah, it's you can wander around and say hello. Yeah.
Hello? Is this on? Is my mic on? I think my mic is on.
Well, my mic wasn't on, so it wasn't very good. There'll be time for more conversation later at the end of the service with some tea and coffee. So let's sing our first hymn, which is number 43 in the hymn book, Gather the Spirit. As is our custom, please listen for the full introduction, then rise if you're able to sing. Thank you.
Good morning. Do we have it? We have one child. If you'd want to come up, it's up to you. What's your name? Well, I was going to ask, is this on? Okay. I was going to ask this morning why you come to church.
So here what's happened. So I was staying at home. I didn't have anything to do. I just laid around watching some things, and then first off I rode on my bike, and then my mummy was passing by with my daddy, and then she told me about this church, and I really liked this church. And then she told me that it has bright lights, and then I really like coming here, so I sang.
Oh. So you were just laying around,
Yes, there's nothing.
and your mom told you about bright lights, and so you decided to come. Well, I know the reason I come to this church, not just any church, but the Unitarian church, is because they don't tell me what I should be thinking about God. They let me ask questions. Do you ever have questions about God?
That night, when I went, so I do my things, and then me and my mummy, we went to bed, and then we do some prayer because two people died.
Okay. So you pray with your family.
Yes.
Any other questions? You ever thought about who God is?
I don't even know.
Right. And that's my point. It's okay to come to this church and not know. And we're not told what God is, or we're not told what to believe, that we can follow our own path. And sometimes not sometimes, we do ask more questions here than we have answers. And so that's one reason I come to church, and I maybe perhaps come to this church, the Unitarian church. And I'm glad you came today, and you should know that it's safe to ask all kinds of questions here. I'm glad you're here. Okay. Thank you for coming up. That was brave of you. And now we would normally sing the children out, but it looks like you're staying. So let's move on. I invite you into a time of prayer and meditation, and we come together in fellowship each Sunday with hearts full of joy and full of concern. If you're holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to say their name aloud in the coming moments of stillness, so that we may also hold them in our prayers. Please say those names now. Spirit of life and love, God of our hearts, we give thanks for those who bring us joy and pray for the safekeeping of those whom we hold in our concern. And for all those names spoken and unspoken, may they be surrounded by the loving kindness we offer them today. Our reading this morning is titled When Covenant Breaks by Francis Koziar. When covenant breaks, hope flickers and doubt seeps in, like floodwaters through the cracks in the basement. While the many return to the comforts of their congregation, we are left staring at the door that was slammed in our faces, wondering if we should walk back in and why. Our faith demands growth, demands inclusion of those who were never like us, whatever side of that us you fall on. But words can be so easily be cast aside in the moments when they matter. Covenant is a promise that we will work together on a team we didn't choose, doing group work we like the idea of far more than the thing itself. It is the radical answer to a radical goal, at least on paper. For our faith does not give us answers for what to do when covenant breaks. When we see that some would rather cling to their patriarchy and their white supremacy, would make problem people of the whistleblowers and hateful radicals of those just asking for rights, would pretend that the promises of covenant mean nothing unless the person is just like you. But then, standing in that cold with that door slammed in front of you, something shifts. Covenant is a promise between the people of this faith, but it is also a promise between ourself and our faith. And sometimes nothing takes more faith than staying. In choosing to speak of your broken heart to those who are brave enough to face change, to stay in dialogue and have those hard conversations you never wanted to have, and choosing to be angry rather than walk away, all of these are holding true to your promise. When covenant breaks, we are sent back to the beginning again, like a toddler on their timeout to think about what just happened, or a minister on their sabbatical called to remember what we fell in love with in the first place. The ship is not sinking. It is only rocked by the violent waves of oppression of someone, if not everyone. And may that humility keep us listening even when our own pain hasn't been heard yet, even when our relationships are shattering like crystals falling to cold stone, even when all you need is a hug and your community won't open its arms yet. When covenant breaks, we need to come home, to trust that there are others out there who would have supported you if they were only there, and to trust that our faith will always be here tomorrow, bound by nothing more or less than the promises made by people willing to fight like a golden web glimmering with dew in the first light of morning. Because when covenant breaks, it is a tear, merely in a web still holding strong. And as long as we believe in ourselves and in the greatness that we could become together, then we can always come back here tomorrow. And let us roll up our sleeves and start weaving again. And so ends the reading. And now let us join in singing hymn number 181. It's 181, Wake Now My Senses. Aha. I found it. And now let us join in a time of prayer and meditation. Let there be a quiet time among us. Spirit of life in us and around us, here is our chance once again to live like we wish the world would live. And may we find within ourselves the courage to be who we are. And may we know when it is time to listen and when it is time to speak. May we trust ourselves to be the ones to find the words that need to be said or to do what needs to be done. May we trust one another and know there are many ways to go through life. May we know that though we cannot change some of what life has given us, we can choose how we deal with what we are given. We are coming into our power, and together we can make possible justice and love. We are all connected. We depend upon one another more than we know. We are one body. And now we will hear music for reflection. If you'd like to light a candle of joy or concern, please do so in silence. So there I was on a hot, rainy summer afternoon, a typical summer day in Florida, where I was living before I arrived in the UK. And I, having finished the book I was reading and reluctant to do the waiting laundry, procrastinating, I decided to watch the telly, flipping through the literally 901 channels available to us in America. And I came across the Inspiration Network. And as sometimes happens, my curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself listening to a sermon preached by a young-looking man who seemed mighty passionate about what he was saying. And most of it I don't remember, but one statement stood out. He was talking about Adam and Eve in the text in the book of Genesis, something about what the Bible really says, and declaring the preacher's, authority to know the Bible's truth, and his responsibility to pass this truth on to others. And this is typical for the tradition of evangelical congregations, but that is not what struck me. He was going along in what appeared to be a standard preaching format for an Inspiration Network worship when he stopped his pacing back and forth across the stage to look at the congregation in the face, and he proclaimed, "The serpent was the first liberal in the Garden of Eden." And a number of those in the congregation gave voice to their agreement, and it was clear that the word liberal was meant as an insult, meant as a link to evil. Rather than being angry at the slight, equating liberals with the devil, as so often happens by fundamentalists, I found myself agreeing with him completely. But not because I too saw it as a bad thing, but because I thought, aha, I finally have proof that we liberals were there right from the beginning. And the evangelical preacher quoted the text of Genesis 2. That's where God speaks to Adam and saying, "You may freely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat it, you shall die." And the preacher then turns to a little later in the text where the serpent speaks to Eve and Adam in Genesis 3. "Now the serpent was craftier than any other wild animal that the Lord God made," this text says. "He said to the woman, 'Did God say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not die, for God knows when you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.'" And the text goes on. "So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves." The preacher then points out that the serpent twists to his own ends the words and meaning of what God said. For the serpent does not lie, but tailors the truth to incite envy and desire from Eve and Adam for what would make them like God. That is not precisely what our first liberal, the serpent, does. He does not twist God's words, but he questions Adam and Eve's blind obedience to God's commandment. He questions whether the understanding Eve and Adam have of those words is correct. He offers a different perspective, a different interpretation. Is this sounding familiar? Is that not exactly what we do as religious liberals to do with all sacred texts? Is that not our practice as Unitarians to question and to reinterpret? The serpent in the Garden of Eden was the first liberal, and I, for one, am proud to claim his questioning ways for myself. And this piece of biblical text causes me to contemplate not only what was lost when Adam and Eve were exiled from the garden, but what did they gain? What did they gain as well? Is there another way of interpreting the fall of humanity that offers us something rather than taking away? Our liberal tradition says yes. We gained knowledge, which is never an evil or sinful thing, though it can be used to those ends. We came into the world, leaving the protective isolation of the garden for the experience of the whole existence. We were given the beauty of toiling for rewards, which often makes them sweeter. In an unkind view, one could say that in Eden, Adam and Eve were living like naive children, where everything was provided and nothing was needed. Of course, many of us long for a time in our lives like that, where all is given easily and little is asked in return, where we need to only think of a thing to have our desires fulfilled. Doesn't it sound beautiful? But is it real? Is it real? What would one strive for if living in paradise? What kind of person would you be if you did not have the experience of living in the world to form you? What would be the point of living if you lived in a heavenly paradise? Maybe it's my Unitarianism that says work is good and the accomplishments feel more significant if you've endeavored for them. But I also think the cost of paradise is too great. For the cost is our knowledge, our knowing, and our learning. I don't think many of us would give up our ability to think and reason and question, to forego death and gain immortality, to sacrifice the fruits of our search for truth, the lessons and wisdom we've gained, or our freedom to apply reason to our convictions for a paradise of limited view. The common denominator of all liberalism is devotion to liberty. Devotion to liberty. Liberalism is that which liberates. Its object is to loosen bondage, whether of the mind or the person, whether of individuals or societies, and its motivation is the faith that human life can only reach its fullest stature through continuous liberation, through the struggle to be free. In religion, the liberals stood for the unhindered use of the free mind in arriving at conviction, truth declared to be more holy than any creed, more sacred than even the most sanctified of dogmas. The liberal refused to accept authoritarian revelations, which contradicted the revelation found in one's own experience. This is the liberalism that founded Unitarianism. We believe in the freedom of all people to determine for themselves the essence, nature, and existence of the holy. We are a tradition whose search for meaning and truth has sent us to the sacred texts of the religions of the world. Because we believe that revelation is not sealed and delivered all at once, and is neither owned nor determined by one body of people, clergy, or laity alike, we seek wisdom from all sources of human experience and knowledge. This is the difficulty religious conservatives have with religious liberals. Religious conservatives seek to preserve the teachings of particular and established ideologies. Within religiously conservative congregations, regardless of theological identity, it is about discovering, naming, and holding to the truth, not to the possibility of multiple truths. And when the Inspiration Network's preacher announced to the crowd that the serpent was the first liberal, he was in fact likening alternative perspectives with an act of evil. That is not to say he was necessarily calling liberals evil, but it was clear in his tone that understanding and believing differently from what he or his tradition determined to be the meaning of God's words was not permitted and simply wrong. I've heard it said that the problem with liberals is that they only see in gray. They can't see a clear way through the fog, meaning that religious liberals see nothing clearly, nothing in black and white, nothing to be right or wrong, that we find it difficult to claim with any certainty or idea or belief that we are paralyzing, subjective, and malleable. A common and even understandable criticism is that liberals believe anything and anything. Did I say anything twice? Anything and everything. While that is far from true, we do struggle with how to maintain a unified identity while creating as few barriers to belonging among us as possible. And though we live in a theological world of ambiguity and multiple ideas, it is the access to that variety that enriches, nourishes, and delights us on our religious journeys. For we find within the many traditions truths about ourselves. As David Rankin writes, like Roman Catholics, we have a long tradition extending back to the sun-baked desert of ancient Israel, the small rural villages of Transylvania, its presence and growth in the United Kingdom, and the rocky shores of early New England. Like the Jews, we have our heroes and heroines, Servetus, David, Wollstonecraft, Fuller, Murray, Channing, Emerson, Barton, to name only a few. And like the Baptists, we have a system of democratic polity, with the congregation as the ultimate authority, an elected board of trustees, and a pulpit characterized by freedom of expression. And like the Confucianists, we have emphasized the capacity for reason, possessing a thirst for the fruits of wisdom and knowledge, and a reverent feeling toward the achievements of the mind. And like the Hindu, we have an eclectic system of theology, encouraging individuals to develop a personal faith which is not dependent on external demand. And like the humanists, we have our roots in the experience of the world, as it is known through the medium of touch, sight, smell, taste, sound. And like the Buddhists, an accent on the individual, on the beauty, the mystery, and the holiness of each person, as each person is a sacred vessel. One of the greatest mistakes we can make, writes James Luther Adams, is to suppose that all religion is good, or that all religion is something revered, something that should be exempt from criticism. That is why I wholeheartedly agree that the serpent in the Garden of Eden holds the honor of the title, the first liberal. The serpent understood that even what is believed to be the word of God is to be examined, questioned, turned over and around, as with all scripture, to determine the actual range of application, intrinsic authority, and dependability of the text. It is this ability and responsibility to bring criticism to religious ideas and theology and ideology that makes us liberal. It is the freedom to decide what the implications of a given sacred text or ritual are and what they mean to us that we are granted in being labeled liberal. As one such liberal continues, I glory in the accusation. I am a liberal without apology, a liberal without misgivings, a liberal without regret. I am an unrepentant liberal. And so too was the serpent in the garden, the one we now know as the first liberal, to question, examine, and find our own personal truth in our faith. May it be so. And now please join in singing our final hymn, number 83, Just as Long as I Have Breath. May all of our hours to be together, may all of our hours together be blessed as this one has been, by open-hearted sharing, learning from one another, and making beautiful harmonies together. And may we greet everyone we encounter with the same acceptance and grateful kinship until we meet again. Blessed be.
Thank you, Michael. That was lovely. And thank you, Reverend CJ, for leading the service and a very thought-provoking sermon. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you, everybody here, for your time. Please join us in the side aisle for tea and coffee. Thank you.